Hey everyone, it's Joe Almeida here in South Florida. For those of you that know me, know that I'm a realtor. I'm also a wholesaler in the area, and I'm always looking to bring those in the real estate industry some useful content. And some time back, I met today's guest who was talking about no money down investing. I was like, oh boy, here we go, another no money down guru. But as I listened, it became more interesting. Like what he had to say seemed like I kind of started to see the value and how it all worked. Well, let's just bring him on, and I'll let him give you a better idea of how his system works. Let's welcome Russell De La Peña, the founder of PushButtonInvestor.com.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to connect. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share some cool stuff with your audience, and it'll be actionable stuff that they can actually use. So if they'll hang out through and to the end of this, I think they're going to get some great content that they can use today, whether they're a wholesale real estate investor who's a seasoned pro or a complete beginner, never done a single deal in their life, or maybe they're a realtor. Maybe they're a realtor who wants to be a wholesale real estate investor and wants to kind of have more options, more tools in their toolbox. I think it'll be good content for them today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've already talked a lot about virtual, no money down real estate investing, and that sounds good, but it sounds kind of, is this real? So tell us a little bit about more. What is that, and how does that look?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that a lot. A lot of folks are like, well, virtual and no money down, and you don't have to leave your house, and you can control real estate from the comfort of your home in your underwear.
I've always wanted.
What's that?
It's what I've always wanted.
So I've been doing it for the last 10 years, and I didn't make it up. I wish I did, but I learned from other investors who were before me who are extremely successful, not only as no money down investors, but also doing the virtual aspect of it, and really just kind of combining the internet marketing component of it so that they could automate 90% of their sales and marketing. 90% of it. I remember when I first started looking into this, it was important to me because as a former realtor, I didn't have anything automated. I was doing 100% of my sales and marketing. So this whole idea of virtual no money down real estate investing was really appealing to me. I tell my wife all the time that I am ambitiously lazy, and I'm always looking for ways to automate, just like they're doing in grocery stores today. In your grocery store, they've got self-checkout. You automate your checkout. When you go to the bank, they automate the checkout. When I go to McDonald's here in Los Angeles, the employees are teaching me how to use the automated machine, which is always a little scary for me, I think, or scary for them. I think you're training me how to use your replacement, but everything's becoming more and more automated. So anyway, that's what appealed to me years ago, and I implemented it for the first time and started to kind of explore with it, and the rest is history.
And so, in a nutshell, what is virtual no money down real estate investing? I mean, everybody wants to be, not everybody, but those that want to get into real estate investing would love the idea of not having to, meet face to face with the seller and all that time sink stuff that goes into real estate investing. You have to go see the property and the thing. And so how does that look? Like, how can I be a virtual no money down real estate investor if I wanted to get started?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit about my background as a contrast to help. I was a realtor with Keller Williams and Remax prior to being a virtual no money down real estate investor. And so I was closing 3 to 5 homes a month. I was working 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was incredibly stressed out because I was working 14 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. It seemed like I was starting my day at 7 at the office. I was finishing often at midnight, faxing in offers back when I used a fax. And it was just long days, and it seemed like there was a ceiling as to what I could do, because if I wanted to sell more than 3 to 5 homes a month, I'd have to work more. I had to get more assistants. I did have assistants at that time, but then, I had to manage them. And so anyway, fast forward to when I discovered virtual no money down real estate investing, I was able to work in any state throughout the United States. I wasn't confined to my own specific state or my own market. I wasn't farming my own market, which is what I was taught as a realtor. I could now farm any market. I could be in any market at any given time. And I can make phone calls to sellers. I personally use different marketing, automated software, ads, things like that to get motivated sellers in front of me and really kind of get them to come to me versus me coming to them, and get on the phone with them. I could structure a very, very simple, no money down offer that would be irresistible to them. And that's a big promise. That's a big thing to say, especially when you're not meeting somebody face to face like I was used to doing. When I was a realtor, I would show a property face to face with the clients. I would do open houses. I would blow up balloons and put them outside the property and be there Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, hours and hours and hours of
a lot of hours going into it. And today I don't do any showings. I haven't done showings in 10 years. The sellers I work with do showings. They show the property to the buyer. I don't do open houses. Sellers do the open houses. I don't put balloons up or signs or anything like that. And so it was really just a matter of me learning how to control something that I wasn't physically in front of, how to inspect property without physically being in front of it, through either videos or just essentially letting the end tenant buyer inspect their own property. So a lot of the stuff that would eat up a lot of the time, I don't have to do, because I've learned, and now I teach how to have other people do that for me, or how to leverage other automated systems, internet systems that do it for me.
Okay. All right. That it sounds awesome. But what caught my attention, and you just touched on it, is the tenant buyer. So how can you control a property that gives you like legal interest in the property, where you can actually get somebody to allow you to control their property and then do what you do to make money from it?
Okay, so how do I kind of orchestrate the process of bringing the two together, the seller and the tenant buyer?
Yeah, like exactly. What would be attractive to a seller that you can offer them that would get them to want you to say, or get them to say yes to your offer?
Yeah, good question. So I think first requires identifying who we're talking about. So I target specifically for sale by owners and landlords.
Okay.
Landlords, since we're going to structure a rent-to-own deal, also known as a lease option, a lease with the option to buy or the lease with the option not to buy. It's really, the reality of that kind of a deal. For a landlord, they're already renting their property. So leasing it, renting it, it's an easy conversation to have with the landlord, because they're already doing it. All we're going to do is we're going to add one piece to it, which is the option to buy that property at some point between 1 to 3 years from now. Mm-hmm. So usually the term I'm working with is 1 to 3 years out. And for the for sale by owner, they'd rather not do this type of a deal. They'd rather do all cash. They'd rather get all their cash today. And when they first put their property on the market, they're confident 100% they're going to sell the next day. They've got the beautiful home. Little Johnny grew up here. The dogs played in the back and everything. This is, and I put $30,000 into the deal or into the house. So it's beautiful. It's a mansion, all this kind of stuff in their mindset. It'll sell tomorrow. And then 30 days pass, 60 days pass, 90 days pass, and the house hasn't sold. And so now they're open to my offer, because they're going to have double payments if they don't. If they've got to move out, and it really just boils down to what's their motivation, right? So for sale by owners looking to initially get all cash because they want to buy a new place, but why? Why are they selling? Maybe they're moving out of state and they don't want to have a double mortgage. They don't want to pay for the house where they're at now and the new house that they're going to be at. Maybe they've lost a job, so the income is gone away and they don't want to foreclose. Maybe there was a death in the family. Maybe there was a divorce. some big life event has changed their current financial situation, so now they're motivated. So they were confident they were going to sell the property on day one, but then a month passes, 2 months pass, 3 months pass. And so if through my marketing, I reach them after month one, after month two, after month three, they're real open now to a terms offer because it solves a problem, right? We oftentimes look at it like solving their financial cancer, if you will, right? So,
Right.
you know, you go to a doctor, he says, you've got brain cancer. We're going to cut open your head. We're going to leave a big scar on your head, but we're going to remove the cancer and you're going to survive and live your life out. Well, you know, and I'm going to charge you $50,000 or $100,000 or whatever they charge for that. And you're going to thank me at the end of it. So I'm going to cut your head open, leave a big scar, and you're going to thank me for it because I've removed your cancer. So from my standpoint, I'm cutting open their head, removing their financial cancer, leaving a big scar, but they're going to thank me for it because they no longer have to have double mortgages. They don't have to foreclose and I have to stress that they would normally have. So if I've reached them through my marketing at that time, they're now very open to, and if they're able to accept terms, my offer is going to be a sight for sore eyes.
Right. So, and it sounds like you're also another reason is they may not have enough equity, and that's why they're not using a realtor because they don't have enough in the house to pay commission, or they just don't want to pay commission. But this also seems like an opportunity for agents to be able to work with those sellers that originally didn't want to use a realtor, but now a realtor can go in and make them this kind of an offer and make money from the deal.
Yeah. When I was a realtor with Keller Williams and then later with Remax, I had never been taught any of this stuff. I had no clue about this. In fact, when it came to talking about investors, I was even told often to stay away from investors, because they were just going to lowball my clients.
Mm-hmm.
But with doing lease options, I can give you your full asking price. And if you have no equity in your home, meaning for those that are just starting out, if the home is worth exactly what you owe, or maybe you owe a little bit more than what it's worth, even slightly upside down, 10 to 20% even.
Right.
I can still put a deal together, and I can still, as an investor, I can still profit. If I'm a realtor, I can still profit from that too. I would just change hats. I'd no longer be the representation of the seller or the buyer. I would be representing myself, acting as a principal. Mm-hmm. So the way I no longer have a license anymore, but I'm still able to do these deals in any state without breaking brokering laws because I act as a principal. I represent myself. I don't represent the seller or the buyer. So if there's no equity, I can still put the deal together, even if the seller is slightly upside down in their property, 10 to 20%. I can still put the deal together and I can still profit from it doing these types of offers.
Well, for those that are watching that they've never heard of a lease option, let's get into the basics of what that is. What does that entail for,
Sure.
For just the basics of it?
Yeah. So just as the name denotes, a lease option, it's a lease with the option to buy a property or the option not to buy. So the buyer is a tenant buyer. They are going to lease the property usually from 1 to 3 years with the option to buy the property during or at the end of those 3 years. At the end of those 3 years, they need to make a decision, especially because they would have put down upfront money. That's how me as an investor makes money. That's how the seller gets a non-refundable option fee. I get a non-refundable option assignment fee. That's how I profit from these deals. At the end of this term, they've got to make a decision. Am I going to buy this house or am I going to lose that option money? And it's fair because the seller has essentially taken their property off the market. They can't lease it to anybody else. They can't sell it to anybody else. That's what that option component does.
Right.
Or the tenant buyer locks the purchase price in from day one. So if this is 3 years later, 3 years before, the seller said, look, the house is worth $200,000. I'm going to lock it in. Now, if the house went up to $250,000 or $300,000, I'm probably not, but let's just say if it did,
right.
The seller couldn't come back 3 years later and say, hey, the house went up in value. The new price is going to be $250,000.
Yeah, they're in contract.
It's locked in.
Right.
So for me as the buyer, that's I'm willing to pay a lot more money to do that, and I don't have to have my credit checked at all. Like,
Exactly.
no one checks my credit. I have to have a background check, but I don't have to have my credit checked. So it's easier to get qualified versus going through a bank loan. For the seller, again, what's in it for them is I've got somebody who's giving me a lot more money down. So this is a lot more secure than just getting a credit report. You know, I lost my real estate business ultimately, and I went bankrupt. I lost everything. But if you would have checked my credit before I went bankrupt, I had almost perfect credit. So if you would have went based off of just my perfect credit, you would have made a wrong decision if you were renting to me. Because right after that, I went bankrupt and lost everything, destroyed my credit.
Right.
So if I'm a seller, I'd rather have a large non-refundable option fee in my hands than a pretty looking credit report.
Okay, so that's where I wanted to go next. So for the tenant buyer, that person, those are people that they want to buy, but they probably have bad credit right now. They have some cash in the bank, but whatever's happened, and their credit has gone bad, so they can't qualify for a loan. But in this, with this opportunity, they can find the house that they like, then lock it down to where if they're a tenant, essentially the seller can sell the house. If they're a regular tenant, like with a regular rental contract, the seller can sell the house to somebody else, and they just continue being a tenant for that new buyer. In this scenario, the tenant buyer pretty much that's his house. It's just he doesn't own it yet on title, but he will own it at the end of the option contract. So when his option expires, he is the only one with the right to buy the house during that period. If he chooses not to buy it, then he can just get out, and it will be like a regular rental. He didn't lose anything. He just basically rented the house for that period. But if he decides to buy it and use his option to buy, the house is his during the time that he's renting the house. So the seller can't sell it to somebody else. The tenant buyer fell in love with the house and he liked it. He can't buy it right now, but he's buying it now in the future.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, again, for brand new folks that are watching this, that might make your head spin a little bit because it's a new concept, but you're right. They're buying it out into the future. They do lose something if they decide not to exercise. They lose that option fee money. So it's going to be greater. Right. A non-refundable deposit usually in a straight rental is like equal to the first month's rent. So if it was a $100,000 house, the rent was $1,000, let's just say round numbers, then your rental deposit would be $1,000, and it's refundable. You get it back at the end of your lease. But with the lease option, you can charge 3 to 5%. So now it's $3,000 or $5,000, and it's all non-refundable. You don't get it back because you're making the seller say, you can't rent or lease this property or sell it to anybody else during this 1 to 3 years. And so what's in it for the seller in this case is they know they've got somebody who's real serious, because this person wouldn't be putting $3,000, $5,000 down in this particular scenario if they weren't serious, because they know they're not going to get it back from day one. Now it's going to apply towards the purchase price, and you can also have some of the rent apply towards the purchase price too, so it whittles it down over time. But yeah, you're correct. They're essentially getting the benefits of having bought a property through a bank without buying it through a bank. That would happen at some point during or at the end of that term if they decide to exercise the option. Now the seller has to sell, but the buyer doesn't have to buy. It's the option to buy. So it's not an actual sale, and people oftentimes get that confused, but the actual name tells you it's the option to buy or not buy.
Yeah, this is a real rent to own scenario. Like you're renting and you're going to own it in the future, and then a portion of your rent goes towards the purchase price. Is that right?
It can, yeah. Doesn't have to, but it probably should, yeah.
They can set up the contract that way. And then you said in the beginning they're giving about 5% of whatever purchase price they agree on, right?
Yeah. So in that case, in our example, it'd be $5,000 down. You could split that between you and the investor or realtor, acting as an investor.
$5,000 or 5% of the because here, I mean, a typical house is going to run you in my area, it's going to be 200, maybe up to 400 would be the price range that you're going to be looking at. So let's say halfway point, 300,000. 5% of that is 15,000. So they're coming up with they're putting in $15,000 to be able to do this lease option, and they're giving that as their, it's not really a deposit because they're not getting it back, but that's the option payment in the beginning. And then if they decide to buy the house in the future, that goes towards their purchase price.
Correct.
If they don't want to buy it, then they forfeit that amount, and that stays with the seller, which essentially is split with the person doing the deal. Like in this case, you.
Yeah, that's how the investor makes their money. They split that 5%. So 5%, an easy way to do it is 5% times whatever the asking price is going to be. So the easiest type of a deal is probably splitting it 50-50, but you can be more aggressive depending on the seller situation and how much more work you're going to do, how much value you're providing, et cetera. But the easy way to just keep it simple, multiply 5% times whatever the asking price. You know, here in Los Angeles, where I'm living, $1 million homes, $2 million homes, although I don't recommend going that high, I'd say probably the most is about 800,000 when you're doing a lease option. Beyond that, your market's going to change and who's going to be interested and who's not. Right. So figure 800,000 times 5%, divide it divide it two ways. You split it between you and the seller. You make your money that way. And so that's why, because there's no transfer of title, there's no transfer of mortgage, everything stays in the seller. It's a rental. It's a lease, more correctly stated, with the option to buy. Then you're just splitting that money with the seller, and you don't need any equity because equity is not going to be touched. To address something that you had said too earlier, you know, we're not talking about putting people who are financial disasters today in somebody's property. I do a lot to scrutinize who I'm putting in the property of the seller, because I want this to be a good and safe deal for everybody. So it really isn't about, and I know that's not what you're saying, but I mean, a lot of people think that. I think your audience probably would be thinking this. Well, so you're just putting somebody who's just reckless with their credit or their finances and stuff like that. First off, not everybody who has bad credit is reckless with their finances. Some people are, for sure, and some people are not. Some people have medical conditions that their insurance didn't cover. They had big life-altering issues, and they end up losing stuff. In my case, I was just not educated financially, and I invested in a TV commercial that was costing me thousands of dollars, and I bought everything. I would say there was a lot of recklessness in that sense. I take responsibility for what happened to me. It was 100% me. It was a lack of education. That's not an excuse. It's just what happened.
Yeah, it was a mistake.
But after that, I learned my lesson going to the School of Hard Knocks, and since then have been very financially strong from learning it. So the point is, you can have good people that have had some, whether it was their own doing or whether it was some kind of health crisis that they had and insurance didn't cover it. Their financial problem has to be of the past. And so what we're doing is looking and making sure that they're strong financially today so that they're not a risk to the seller. The seller is privy to all documentation. Documentation beats conversation. So we make sure that they get all that information up front, and they can see that this person is a safe person today, even though their credit score might be low.
Okay, so you're scrutinizing, you're checking the person that wants to be a tenant buyer. You're checking them out as far as their financial situation and their background, and just to make sure that they're a good person to be in as a tenant until the point where they become the buyer. During the time they're going to be a tenant, if you know that they don't mess up the house or anything like that. If they decide not to buy the house, they don't leave it, all destroyed, and doesn't end up costing the owner money in the end. So you want to protect the seller from that. You also, if the owner says, well, why don't I just rent it myself? In this setup, the tenant buyer has more responsibility than a traditional tenant, right?
Yeah, great question. So we always make the end tenant buyer. When I say end tenant buyer, I'm talking about me being buyer number one, them being buyer number two, because legally I need to be a buyer on paper, making it clear to the seller that my intention is to sell or assign the contracts over to an end tenant buyer. This is all about assignment of contracts. The tenant buyer, we make them responsible for the first usually $3,000 to $5,000 in any repair. So for the landlord, that's music to their ears because they're usually open to this type of an agreement because they're tired of being a landlord. They don't want to fix leaky roofs or toilets,
Right.
or tubs that are stopped up.
Right.
They're done being landlords. So this is like a sight for sore eyes. If they're for sale by owner and they've never been a landlord, oftentimes they hear the horror stories of it and they don't want to be a landlord, right? And so our solution to that solves that issue. And even if they've got a property manager, they don't even need that because the end tenant buyer that I'm assigning contracts to, I've written in the contract that they're going to be responsible for the first $5,000 in any kind of repair. That means that they can't call the seller on weekends. They can't call them late at night. They're responsible for fixing that up. And because they're looking to achieve home ownership and they want control of this property, well, they get control of the property. They get to control all of the property.
Right. It pretty much becomes like their home, unless, like in our area, we get hit by a hurricane. Then the seller would invoke his homeowner's insurance and fix the property.
That's right. Anything beyond $5,000 is like an act of God, like a hurricane. You know, that the roof blows off. So at that point, insurance would kick in. So in either case, the seller is not responsible. So that's why it's an irresistible offer. I talk a lot about that with my mentor students, that you've got to know how to position or create an irresistible offer, especially over the phone with people that you're never going to meet, because it's got to be irresistible. Now, I don't just mean tell them everything they want to hear, that the offer is great, but also removing risk. That's huge. You know, if you never meet somebody, automatically their radar goes up and their alert goes up, and is this a scam and all that kind of stuff? This is on or whatever. So you've got to have that skill to be able to explain to them, look, here's how we remove all your risk. I always tell sellers up front on the very first phone call, by all means, have your real estate attorney involved in everything that we do. I tell them that up front. And that oftentimes puts them at ease because they say, all right, this guy's not trying to pull the wool over my eyes. He's not trying to scam me. If he was, he wouldn't tell me to get a real estate attorney involved in the deal.
Yeah, right. You're not trying to be all smooth and make it seem like this is what they need and let's just get it done so you don't miss out on the opportunity. You're telling them to get their attorney involved and have the attorney take the time to analyze all the paperwork and what they're doing, what you're offering them.
I tell them to put them on the phone with me. We can do a 3-way call. I'm happy to talk to them.
Now you do that with your students, right? Like you like, let's say if you have a student that finds a seller and they're interested, you would get on the phone with that seller and the student on kind of like a conference call and answer their questions and for somebody that's just starting out that doesn't know all the things the details that have to be told to a seller, you would get on the phone and kind of back them up and help them out.
I encourage it because when you're brand new, you're terrified about what sellers are going to ask you. And let's face it, there are some sellers, and understandably so, wanting to grill you because they're nervous, right? It is weird that you're not going to go physically inspect the property. You know, traditional real estate says you go out, you meet with the seller, you give them an idea of what their house is worth, and, you know, traditional real estate, right? And here, you're never going to meet them, ever. I mean, you could, but you don't have to. And so then this typical sellers are going to say, well, how many deals like this have you done before? You know, am I your first? Do you have, do you have any testimonials? Do you have any proof, social proof from other people that you've helped besides me that you've done this successfully? And so these are tough questions for a brand new person to hear because they're going, no, I don't have that. In fact, I was on a call just recently with a mentor student and I was talking to their seller. Well, I asked my mentor students to place themselves on mute. So there's no background noise, so I can concentrate. And B, so that way it takes the pressure off of them 100%. Their job is really just to be a good appointment setter. Set me up, connect me on the call with their seller. And I've got a really good guy, mentor student right now who's in Colombia. He's not even in the country. He's doing deals here in the U.S. So this works for people anywhere throughout the U.S. or throughout the world. I've got folks that work with me in the United Kingdom,
Oh, so
Trinidad.
you do the actual call with the seller. Like if I'm your student, I find a motivated seller, then I set up the appointment for you to talk to the seller, and I just put myself on mute and listen in.
Yeah. I literally do all the talking because I know, number one, what I'm looking for from the seller. So it's not just them grilling me, it's me also lovingly grilling them as well to make sure that I've got
Yeah.
a viable seller. And then I also know where I want the call to go. So
Okay.
another skill that my mentor students learn is the ability to ethically and honorably persuade over the phone. It's also known as high ticket closing, right?
Hmm.
It just sounds a little bit better, I think, when you say that, look, we're not trying to manipulate anybody here, but we
Right.
are definitely clear about our objective on this call, right? Like, I know if this is a good deal, my intention on the call, and I let the seller know up front, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, my intention on this call, now that I know a little bit about your situation, is to do business with you. The next
Hmm.
step that we want to take is doing a letter of intent where we're going to put in writing everything we just said on this call so you can see it, so your real estate attorney can see it, so your spouse can see it. And then our follow-up call is to put you under contract and get money in your pocket. Is there anything I've missed today on today's call? Is there anything
Right.
that I'm missing that would stop you from getting, from moving forward? And so I'm real clear with that, but that takes the pressure off of my mentor student from having to know all that. And also they're able to hear on the job training. They get to earn while they learn. They get to listen in as to what I'm saying, what I'm not saying. And then
Yeah.
after that call, we can debrief and I can say, did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I didn't say? Did you understand why I was saying it? And the feedback is usually really like blown away because normally what you hear is some kind of if you hear somebody teaching this, you hear kind of like a recorded call and you're always thinking in the back of your mind, boy, I wish it would have been more specific to my own deals. I wish I could
Yeah.
hear it live, specific
Yeah.
to my.
That's true. That's huge. To be able to create at least the connection, generate the interest with the seller, and then have somebody that has experience in doing this take over and close the deal for you, and then you listen the entire time, allows you to not only see how it's done, but adopt what you learn to your own methods. Maybe you come up with a better way to do it. Maybe you come up with even better ideas on how to say things or what have you. I mean, every situation is different, but the basics, and then the way to learning the basics and then hearing you do it. And how long? That's not in, like, you don't do that forever. How long do you do that for students?
I'll do it for 3 months. My
Wow.
current program is a 3-month program, so um, I enjoy it, and I don't care who's on the phone with me. I also do role play because what you're asking is at some point you got to kind of teach the new student to kind of get their feet wet and do it themselves, right? And so if we're not doing live calls, then we're doing role play. It's powerful to be able to build that confidence on the phone with me and have me live critique you and say, you know what, you sound like a salesperson. You sound like you're convincing me. You're an investor. You shouldn't be convincing me. I'm the seller. I should be convincing you, the investor, this is a good deal that you should invest in. And it
Mm-hmm.
blows away people when they go, that's true. I feel like a salesperson. I feel like I'm trying to convince the seller. And the seller knows that. They can hear it. And it makes them uncomfortable. It makes
Yeah.
them uncertain. And so my job is to, whether I'm talking to a seller or whether I'm role playing with a mentor student, is to show them how to bring a seller from uncertainty to certainty, how to make them feel confident with this stranger that they're going to do business with their most valuable, in most cases, their most valuable investment over the phone. How do you bring them from insecurity or uncertainty to 100% security or certainty? And so that's what we're working on, whether we're on the phone with sellers, doing it live, or we're doing role playing in 3 months. And by the way, 3 months is way more time than you need. My average to close a deal is 7 to 14 days. My fastest is 6 days. I know people have done it in a half hour. They have buyers already kind of in place. So you don't need 3 months, but 3 months is a way to where you master 3 main skills. The 3 main skills are knowing exactly who your target market is. You're not chasing shiny objects. You're not going, well, this wholesale book that I got says I should go look in the vacant homes, or this wholesale book that I got says I should try to find foreclosures or probate or whatever, some desperate seller. I don't want to work with desperate sellers. Our sellers aren't desperate. Our sellers are landlords and for sale by owners who are on time with their payments, who have equity or don't have equity. It doesn't matter. And so that's skill number one. Skill number two is how to do an irresistible offer that a seller in their mind would say, I'd be crazy not to say yes to this offer. If you can get to an offer like that, you're going to obviously get offers accepted. And because our offers are like that, 1 out of 3 sellers will say yes to our offers. 1 out of 3. It's not 1 out of 100 like unfortunately, most wholesalers have to suffer through. Yeah. It's 1 out of 3 because they don't have to have equity. We don't have to jump through all the hoops of banks and all this kind of stuff. And because we're giving them their full asking price versus a low ball offer. So if they can accept terms, they don't have to accept cash all day, all up front, this will work. And the third skill is the ability to do high ticket closing over the phone. Honorable and ethical persuasion over the phone with people that you're never going to meet. And so all you need is a laptop and a cell phone or some kind of a device. I've got even people who do it with like iPads or even just their cell phone only. If you have that, then you can do this business. And so those 3 skills not only are great for this particular business and are necessary to have a virtual business where you never meet with anybody, but these skills transfer to other businesses. For example, I own other businesses. One of them is a photography business, nothing to do with real estate. We have an actual physical location studio where my wife runs our photography business. But she learns from me these high ticket sales. It is ironic. Most people don't know this, but most people that want to have an internet business or online business, they think, well, I'll start out with low dollar, low ticket offers, products and services. It takes as much work to close a $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 deal, $20,000, $25,000 deal as it does a $10 product. And that's a weird thing to say. People say, what do you mean it takes as much? It does. It takes as much work to build an offer to sell a low ticket product or service as it does a high ticket product. And so my mentor students for 3 months are getting that very, very hands-on training. People oftentimes promote their products and services and they'll say, I'll hold you by the hand, but you just get a bunch of recordings. Right. In our program, we actually have a 6-module recording that a 6-module, like 6 chapters, if you will, course. But then you also have the course creator, me, that works with you. So it's not just
it's a one-on-one setup. It's not just videos. It's actual you going on live calls.
It's both, yeah.
Right. So you have a reference of videos that you recorded. Do you record the calls as well?
I do. I record some of them, not necessarily with sellers because they, here in California, my understanding is you need the permission of the seller, but I will record mentor calling with my mentor students, and then they get a recording of our maybe we're doing back and forth role playing and stuff like that. So they'll get that where I'm just giving them a lot of gold nuggets that may be hard to remember or write down as we're kind of going through it quickly and everything. But then they can go back and they can watch the recording.
Okay. I mean, if they wanted to, they can also get an app on their phone and record the call, and it's just for their own personal use. That's not like. Yeah,
exactly. It's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not familiar with all the laws on it, but yeah, if they want to record it for their own use and not use it to sell it or something like that, or they probably could.
Yeah, I mean, for stuff like that, I've used Cube ACR for like stuff that I want to remember. If I'm talking to a seller and I'm in the car and I can't take notes, and I can listen to that later. But just for my own personal use. I mean, obviously, you have to respect the laws. Is there a contract that you use? Do you use like a regular rental contract, or what do you use to create these deals?
Yeah, great question. There's really kind of like 2 sets. The initial set is a lease option memo. It's an abbreviated version of the full contract. So the full contracts are a full lease agreement, a full purchase agreement, an option agreement, a seller disclosure, and then an assignment agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the full contracts that are drafted. I typically will draft those with my mentor students, also screen sharing so they can see how I'm doing it. When we're underway. But the first agreement that we use to start everything, to lock up a deal, one of the other reasons why this is an irresistible offer is because it's non-threatening. It's a one-page document. A little weird for most people because they're used to more of the full, contracts and needing 12 attorneys in the room before they sign it. This is a one-page, easy to sign, no risk, fill in the blank form that a brand new person who's never gotten a deal under contract before, or maybe someone who's a seasoned pro, because I work with all of them. I work with 30-year veterans. I work from people who've never put a deal together in their life. It's a one-page fill-in-the-blank document that allows a non-licensed wholesaler or a licensed realtor who's working in a different state to get the legal interest to a property, the option right, the option to buy that property. So now they're acting as a principal, and that deal's under contract. They can now start marketing the deal online legally without breaking any brokering laws because it states that they represent themselves and not anybody else. And that one lease option memo starts everything. And so that's why, again, 1 out of 3 sellers say yes to it, because it's just an easy document to say. There's just no risk for them.
And it breaks down what you're offering them.
It makes it clear that I'm not the end tenant buyer. This other thing about that some people teach where they're talking about, all right, you got to pretend like you're going to buy the house. And then after you build rapport and you string the seller along for a while, you're going to tell them it's not really for you. It's going to be for somebody else. I just tell them up front, this house is not going to be for me. I'm going to find somebody else to buy my position. As a principal, I'm not acting as a broker. I'm not trying to do work on behalf of a seller and represent somebody else, which is what the law talks about. Again, I'm not an attorney, so everybody, disclaimer, go talk to your own attorney. But the law states, in my understanding, and in numerous other investors across the U.S. and again around the world, we all know that you get in trouble when you're doing work on behalf of another without a license. When you're saying I represent you, I say that very clearly in my agreements. I don't represent anybody but myself.
And not only that, it's the ethical way to do things. You want to be transparent. You don't want to lie to people and make things seem like something else and then kind of bait and switch. No, just be transparent. Tell them what you're doing. If they don't like it, that's fine. If they do like it, you move forward. I mean, why would you do otherwise? Because it just invites more trouble into the deal, whether it be in the beginning or towards the end. You don't want to get into it.
One of the key secrets to good high-ticket closing over the phone is being extremely transparent. Yeah. Because your listener is going to respect you more when they go, wow, I can't believe he or she talked about this. It was the elephant in the room. I was thinking it, but I didn't think anybody would talk about it. I do. I bring up the elephant in the room and I talk about the elephant in the room. We all know he's in there. And when you bring it up, it puts although it might be uncomfortable at first, it builds trust. So these are part of the skills that folks need to learn, is that you've got to build that trust. And the way you do that is by talking about things that nobody else would talk about. Talk about it right there on the phone. That's exactly why you talk about it. And, I explain that to sellers up front. Look, 30 or 40% of tenant buyers actually exercise their option. Mm-hmm. And they go, huh? You're telling me that the chances, it's only about 30 or 40% chance that somebody's actually going to buy my house at the end? I go, yep.
And I'm going to make money in the process because, they're going to make the initial money that the tenant buyer will give to get into the deal. And then
I tell them, look, what is your downside here? At the middle or at some point during the term or at the end of the term, the buyer says, you know what, I can't buy the property. So you get the house back, you call me up, which sellers do, and we'll just do it again. You've had a hands-free deal for a couple of years or a couple months or however long it ended up being. You got a big chunk of change that was non-refundable. You had a safer person in your property than you did by putting a regular tenant who gave you a small refundable deposit based off of their credit. I'd rather have a big chunk of change of cash in my account than a pretty looking credit report.
And they're less likely to walk away.
Well, yeah, again, I'm an example of that. I had perfect credit and then I went bankrupt. So if you would have done that with me, you know, that would have been a mistake, right? But you would have said all traditional teaching would have said that was the right decision. So yeah, being real upfront, I said, look, you know, your downside here is that we'll just put somebody else in your property. Or if it's been 2 or 3 years into the term and maybe the house went up in value, now you can sell it for all cash. You know, you've had no downside here.
Yeah.
We've solved the problem. And if they don't buy, you've got a bunch of free money and, you know, you can, so it's up to the buyer to make that decision. You know, it's up to them to know what they're buying first. We're not trying to rip them off. Look, if you're going to put the money down, if you're going to buy a house, you should talk to a real estate attorney also, and you should know what you're buying.
Mm-hmm. Where do you find the tenant buyers? Do you have a list that you've created, or?
I have created lists of it, but I found that just doing some simple marketing, which I teach in my course and live, you don't even need to spend money on advertisement. I don't spend money. I don't do paid ads. I don't even put signs in front of the property or hire somebody locally to do that. I know that's taught as well. I don't do that. Haven't done that. No problem. Here's why. If a property is priced correctly, and we talk about that also in my course of how to price a property correctly that you never see, right? You never see it. Then you don't need paid advertisement. You'll get a ton of buyers. I have one mentor student that got 543 tenant buyers for his property. Now it was a lower end property, so to be fair, it was probably like 48,000. So this is an extreme case. But even if it was, you know, $300,000 or $400,000, you'd get less than 543, but you'd have a nice influx of buyers coming.
But you don't need that many, even close to that many to.
You just need one. You just need one tenant buyer to buy the property. Yeah. And so the point is you've got options. You're no longer chasing, begging, or pleading anybody. That goes the same thing for sellers too. We position ourselves using automated tools and stuff to where we get more sellers than we can handle fast. In fact, one of the things I do with my mentor students that blows them away, in fact, just did it recently, yesterday actually with somebody, is on a live screen share call, we run text blast. Sometimes we'll do Facebook ads too, or different methods, but we'll get leads live on the call. During the screen share call, within about 30 minutes, leads are coming in. One gentleman got 104 and counting within the first half hour, and then it kind of trickled in the next couple of hours later. Most people are used to not getting any leads, and that's why they've got to chase big or plead sellers that they do get, because they're only getting 1 or 2 once in a while. And so they're like, I've got to make this work. But when you've got 100 or over 100 leads coming in, you don't have to make it work. You can cherry pick. You know, there's an old saying that says that amateurs convince, professionals sort. And so I know for a fact, and this is something I teach a lot of folks all the time, out of every deck of cards, there's 52 cards. Every single deck of cards has 52 cards. Every single one. And within every deck of cards of 52, there are 4 aces. 4 aces. That means that there's 48 non-aces. So I know every time I run a campaign, there are 4 aces in there. My job as a professional that is sorting, not an amateur that convinces, is that I've got to flip through these cards as fast as I possibly can to get to those 4 aces. It also means that I'm not an amateur that is finding a jack or a queen or a spade and going, let me scribble it out and make them into an ace. See, when you're desperate for leads and you don't have a way to get a consistent set of leads coming in, you've got to chase big and plead those leads. You have no other choice because you have no other leads. So
that works against you too, because it's like the analogy of if you chase a dog, it runs away, but if you run away from a dog, it chases you.
Yeah, so, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you've got to be in a position where you've got a consistent, constant, predictable stream of income coming in. And the only way that's going to happen to be successful in your business is if you have a consistent, predictable stream of leads coming into your business.
Right.
Leads are the lifeblood of your business that you can sort and you can see where there's a fit. It makes you more confident. It makes your vocal music when you're talking to somebody on the phone sound more confident. Again, you're taking an insecure prospect that is not certain about you over to certainty. And the only way you're going to do that is if you're first certain.
Yes, right. You have to know what you're saying and have confidence in what you're offering.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick example. Let's say I'm a realtor, and in this in what you teach, I'm not acting as a realtor. I'm acting as a principal. So that's the first point. I'm not really trying to get a listing to rent. I'm acting as someone that's going to approach the seller and make them an offer. But what would you be offering exactly? Like for realtors, how would they phrase that without sounding like a realtor? You know what I'm saying? And still sound attractive to the seller, to the owner.
Yeah. So great question. And, for all the folks that are licensed realtors, like I used to be, like you currently are, whether you're working in your own home state or you're wanting to work outside of that state, one of the things that I found years ago when I was a realtor is that I was stuck and kind of trapped with my own market. And my market was great. I was doing great. If my market stunk, then it created a challenge for me because you're taught to farm your own market. But what I love about being virtual is I'm just that. I can be in any market I want in minutes. I can just simply run my campaign in a different place, right? I don't have to be in that same place. And so for your realtor who's like, either I want to be in a different market or I don't want to be trapped in my own specific market, or maybe they are working in their own local market, but they run into sellers that have no equity, right? So that means they can't pay their commissions. What I would do in the past is say, well, I can't help you because you can't pay my commissions.
Right.
But if I know lease options, I don't need you to have any equity. You can have zero equity. You can be slightly upside down. So let's say the house was $200,000. That's what the seller needs or wants. Needs it because let's say they have no equity, so they need $200,000 because they got to pay off the bank.
Yeah, they owe $195, or $190, and they got to, and the market value is $200.
So they obviously can't afford to pay my commissions or the buyer agent who's going to bring the buyer who's going to help me sell this house. So what I would do is I say, listen, not a problem. I change hats, and I say, I'm going to make an offer representing myself, acting as a principal in this transaction. I tell them right up front. And there's even a seller disclosure that they have to sign. It says, either I'm not an agent, or if I am an agent, I'm an agent, but I don't represent you. And you sign off the fact that you know that now.
Right.
You agree to that. I represent myself and myself only. I don't even represent the buyer that I'm going to find. I don't represent them either. I'm acting as an investor, a principal that represents my own interest. And my intention is to make a profit here, not a commission, but a profit. So what I would do is I would take 5%. Again, there's other ways to structure this. There's other ways to get more money, but for simplicity's sake, especially for the brand new person that might be listening to this interview, I'm going to take 5% times 200,000. Let's call it $10,000. I'm going to give you, the seller, $5,000. I'm going to keep $5,000. I'm going to control this entire deal from the comfort of my own home. But don't worry, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, because I'm going to find a tenant buyer that you're going to absolutely love, or we won't do the deal. You're going to see all documentation about their financial history. The exception would be you're not going to see a credit report, because oftentimes these folks have in the past had financial problems, but they've got to be able to show they've got good financial standing today. They've got good command over their finances today. And they're going to provide us rental history that they've been paying on time. We're going to basically manually underwrite this deal, essentially. So for those that have familiarity with loans and mortgage, who make it maybe a mortgage broker, we're going to do like a manual underwriting. We're going to look at all their documentation. We're going to present a full package of that documentation to the seller so they can scrutinize it as well. Anything that's missing or that is a red flag for a seller, we'll ask the tenant buyer to provide that. And if it's not a fit, if things look a little bit too scary, then we say, no, sorry. And then for good measure, for our biggest security is going to be the end tenant buyer is going to bring that $10,000 plus the first month's rent, by the way. So they're going to put $10,000 down, which just goes for the option fee to the seller and the option assignment fee to me. And they're going to bring the first month's rent too, which for a $200,000 house, let's call it $1,500. So they would bring $11,500 to the table, 1,500 goes to the rent, the other 10,000 is split 50-50 between me and the seller. And they're able to have their real estate attorney involved, and the house is going to be, we talked about it's going to be a hands-off deal. The first $5,000 of repairs will be taken care of by the tenant buyer that I'm going to bring, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. The house will be sold as is, and at some point during the term or at the end of the term, this tenant buyer will have the option to cash you out, and you'll be done. If they don't, we know that 30 or 40% will, and the other won't. Then you just call me back up and we'll do it again. Or if the market has changed significantly at that time for some reason in your favor, then you can just sell the property in the traditional way and hire a realtor.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I would end the conversation, by the way, by saying I've got a 1-page lease option memo that I want to send to you. You can have your real estate attorney review it. Or your priest, your dog, whoever you want to look at it, they can do it. And that's all we need to get started. So, I'll send it to you right now. It'll also come with a letter of intent that'll describe more of what we talked about in detail here today on our phone call. I'll put it in writing as well. And if everything looks good, you sign it, I'll get going. And it's easy in for the seller. It's easy out too. They can cancel it as well without me ever asking them for any money or anything like that.
Okay. That sounds like a no-brainer for a seller who, let's say, if I wanted to start this today, I can get on Zillow, I can look at for sale by owners, then filter out the days on Zillow for that, so that they've been on there for a while, so that obviously the house isn't selling for whatever reason, and then approach those for sale by owners with this offer, because those are the people that would probably be, if they just put the house on the market, they probably wouldn't. They don't want to give us time to try to sell. But if they haven't sold it, and it's been a long time, they probably had a bunch of people call them, a bunch of investors call them, a bunch of people wanting to walk through the house and haven't turned into any contracts or offers. And then I show up with this possibility, and I'm taking on the burden of finding them the tenant buyer. And yes, I'm going to make money from it, but I'm providing a service at the same time.
You're solving the financial cancer.
Yeah, I'm solving a situation.
Would the seller like to get all $10,000 up front? Sure. But if they knew how to do what you knew how to do, they wouldn't need you, and they can just do it on their own. Right. I'm looking to provide value where value is needed, where somebody who has the expertise about talking with sellers, talking with buyers about this specific lease option topic, doing it virtually and controlling it virtually, has the contracts that are specific to lease options. This is not a traditional, just a purchase agreement and that's it. There's other components to it, and knows the rules, has access to, like we do, attorneys throughout the United States. So when there's different nuances, like in Texas or the Carolinas and a few other states where lease options have specific rules, that's important. And so you need to know what you're doing. And if the seller doesn't know that, then they're going to kind of blindly do this with, in most cases, their biggest investment, which is their house. So they're not paying any commissions, and none of that $5,000 that's coming to me in this particular example is coming out of their own pocket.
Right.
They say, well, yeah, it would have gone into my pocket. Yeah, but it didn't come out of your pocket. And again, if you can do it on your own, you don't need me. And I'm cool with that, because I've got so many people I need to talk to. So I want to find that out as quickly as I possibly can to get out the phone, so I can get on the phone with somebody who does need my help.
Yeah, makes sense. So, okay, so then I can pretty much find this, and I can do this anywhere. I'm not restricted to the area where I live. I can do this pretty much in any part of the country. Yeah. Just go on Zillow and look at the for sale by owners there, right? You personally could be out of the country doing this in the country, right, in the U.S. With technology today. You don't even have to be here. I've got many people, like I've said, Thailand, Trinidad, I never can say it, Trinidad, Tobago, something like that. The United Kingdom, Colombia, people from around the world that are investing in the U.S. And because of like what we're on right now, the screen share software that we're on right now, it brings us all together. You could have been in another country and it wouldn't have mattered. Right. Okay. So then to get started, we had talked about for today's people that are watching today, watching the video, that you would provide the way that they can get started with the lease option memo. So we're going to go ahead and set that up to where, depending on where you're watching this, there'll be a link either on the side or below it. Click through that link and you'll be able to get access to Russell's lease option memo.
Yeah, if you want the easiest and the fastest way to get your first or your next deal under contract, especially virtually, I'm absolutely happy to give this to you. It's like Joe said, it's a one-page lease option memo. It's the weird one-page document that's filmed the blank that within a few minutes you can fill this out, submit it to a seller, and get them to say yes. In fact, 1 out of 3, when properly presented, will say yes to this agreement. So if you've been struggling in the past with getting 1 out of 100 to say yes to your lowball offers, when you're looking for distressed properties, this one-page document will be worth gold to you, because now 1 out of 3 will say yes to you. And the only reason why the other 2 will say no is because they just need cash. They just can't do the deal. But otherwise, this is a full asking price, hands-off offer. And so, yeah, we're going to provide it to you, free. Just click the link, get the download, and then fill in the blanks, start putting your deals together. Like you said, Joe, you're correct. Go to Zillow, go to Craigslist, go wherever sellers have their houses, and start making these no money down offers. They don't require you to ever use any money. You don't need a hard money loan. You don't need a bank loan. You don't need a private loan. You can put these deals together as many as you want. There's no bank restriction on how many deals you can put together. You don't need to risk your own credit. And this will allow you to put as many deals as you want together throughout the country, whether you're in the country or you're out of the country, and start getting some deals put together so you can start closing some no money down deals.
Well, no, just to touch on something you just said. As wholesalers, you need to call, some people say 15, 30 to get one lead. But the reason for that is that you're lowballing. You're offering them a lot less than what they want to get for the property because of their situation. And it's like you're acting as the pawn shop of real estate. They can't get rid of the property. They got to get out of it. So they take it, and they're willing to take less money for whatever the asset that they own. In this case, the house. But with this scenario, with what you teach, you're not really lowballing. You're just saying, okay, Mr. Seller, you can keep your asset for another year or two, and keep realizing the tax benefits of owning real estate, and keep making money from it every month, and sell it in the future. Like, you want to sell it now, you're just going to have to wait a little bit before you can sell it, but you still make money during that time, and you don't have to worry about the tenant, because the tenant is responsible for the lion's share of the problems that can come up with the property. They have to fix it.
They're responsible for all of it.
It's like
anything beyond that is insurance.
Yeah, it's like being a landlord without having the traditional problems that landlords have.
Without being a landlord, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, without being a landlord, yeah. So it sounds like, and so you're not lowballing, you're not, and I guess that's why 1 out of 3 accept it, because you're not offering them something that they have to kind of grit their teeth and say, okay, fine, I'll take it because I have to get rid of my house. No, you're offering them something good. It's just like you're still gonna sell your house for the price that you want today, in the future, in the not so distant future, and you're gonna be making money a lot, considerable amount of money during the interim. So why not? You haven't been able to sell it so far.
Yep,
it makes sense. I like it. All right, so then the link will be, like I said, below or above or beside or somewhere around the video. And so to click on the link and get your lease option memo and get started. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments or reach out to Russell or myself personally, and we'll help you however we can.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for this time. It's been a blast. And I definitely hope that whether folks are wholesalers, realtors, or they want to become that, they want to do it virtually without money, without leaving the comfort of their home. I hope that they've got value out of this, and that they'll take action, get the lease option memo, download it, and take action.
Sounds good, buddy. All right. Well, good talking to you. It was a great interview, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, sir. Bye-bye.